Good evening, Lexbots.
I figured that I'd start off by showing you guys some demos on my hands. No, like the hand at the end of Smash Bros. There are multiple different types of these Skin Illustrator palettes. This one is called Necromania, and if you open it, this is the only Necromania that I have, so it has clearly been used. Normally there's names up here, and this is normally filled with paints, names like this, but then... So this Necromania palette is the main one we're going to be focusing on for veins, and it normally has a flesh tone color up here. Obviously this is gone. The Necromania palette is best for dead characters. Even though the veins we're making living, it also has a lot of cool tones in here. And for all these alcohol based palettes, you will need alcohol to activate them. Just like the water based face paints are normally activated with water, these guys are activated with alcohol. The next Skin Illustrator palette is Skin Illustrator Effects, and I just want to go over and show you guys what these guys come in. All Skin Illustrator palettes are all alcohol based palettes, but as you guys can see, this is a much brighter palette. It has a lot more of the primaries in it. It has, names. It's not dirty. On the note of them being dirty, because these are alcohol activated paints, these are self-sanitizing. This Skin Illustrator Effects palette is more for bruises, cuts, scrapes, scabs. I use this palette most for bruises. Obviously this is a brand new palette. I have not used this one yet. Once you start using it, The last one that I have is Skin Illustrator, and this is straight up skin tones, as well as, a little bit of vein colors, more basic neutral stuff. This one is actually called Vein Tone, and I do like this one as well. It's very similar to the blue in the Necromania palette. This one is a little bit more bright, and this one's a little bit more flames dull. I will be going over these other ones in Halloween videos this year, but for today we're going to be focusing on the Necromania palette. Now, as I said, these are activated by alcohol, so I went and purchased 99% isopropyl alcohol. I got these at Safeway. I'm not sure what the equivalent to Safeway is. They have Safeway in Arizona. I don't remember the name of the actual store. These can be difficult to find in the 99% alcohol, but you guys might be able to find these at an Ace Hardware store. Now, when I bought these palettes, they did have a Skin Illustrator activator. I'm not sure what this exactly is, but I would assume it's a bottle of alcohol. So the colors that I'm going to be selecting for today's veins, just using regular human skin flesh tone, I'm mostly going to be using Gray Matter on Ice, Frankenstein, and possibly mixing it up with a little bit of bone. Now, when I first got this palette, I had a little bit of a spray bottle, and I was just spraying it lightly with alcohol. As you guys can see, these paints are not going anywhere. I had a little bit of a spray bottle of alcohol, and I was just and I'd get very annoyed when they would dry up right away, and I did not understand exactly how these palettes work. When working with veins, you guys want to make sure that you have enough alcohol in the paint. The more alcohol you have, the less opaque they are going to be, and you want them to look like they are sitting underneath your skin, not just drawn on top of your skin. So when I say pour alcohol on these, we don't mess around. Now that I have my alcohol in the paints, which they literally are like little swimming pools, I'm going to take a little bit of the Frankenstein color, put it on the lid. This is why my lids get all messy, but it's really good to use it as a mixing palette. I'm taking a decent amount of Gray Matter and mixing that in. You guys can see that they instantly mix together just like regular paint. And I'm taking a smidge of On Ice. Now you guys can see this mixture is very, very watery. I'm just taking some on a very thin brush, and I'm just gonna lightly test it out on my wrist. It looks a little heavy. You could just tap it right into your skin, and it looks more like a vein. Right now I'm going to go over my natural veins that I have underneath my skin just to kind of show you guys that it can darken them up. Now this still is pretty thick for a vein and pretty dark. If you want to lighten it up, all you have to do is add a little bit more alcohol to your mixture, and that'll water down your paint even more. When making veins, you want to make sure they kind of trail off a little bit as opposed to being kind of stubby, because mostly when you see your veins, they're kind of coming up a little bit from your skin and sinking back down again. So trailing off a little bit from my natural veins, if you want to make some additional crazy veins, you could always use the tip of your brush and very lightly guide yourself away. The hardest thing I find when making veins is that you really want them to show up very in your face. Veins are not supposed to be very in your face unless you're severely infected, but that could also make it look very fake. To give it a really gross, more infected kind of look, I like to do a lot of little tiny capillaries stemming from the veins itself. There are a lot of little squiggly lines, and they're very easy to do. And that's the basics for making veins. Overall, you want them to stay pretty subtle. Even these are pretty intense towards the middle, but it's more towards Halloween, you want to go more theatrical. You want to make sure they are standing out. Of course, another gross thing is to move your tendons around in your wrist, making your veins kind of stick out. To take off the Skin Illustrator, you will need to use alcohol to take it off. Another option if you want to make them a little bit more purple, and then using this reddish purple color and bringing this up here, as well as mixing in the color Bone to bring it a little bit more neutral. Once again, you can go ahead on your arm. And if you feel like it's too heavy, you can go back in and add a little bit more alcohol, and that'll make it a little bit more subtle as well. For the reddish purple veins, I like to make them a little bit more squiggly because they're a little more towards capillaries than they are veins. These are a little bit more of like a stressed out, that's not a vein. Don't get confused where you put veins. These types of veins are more like stressed out, a lot of blood flow, broken capillaries, maybe even like a zombie infection. You could always bring in some like other colors, like you want to bring in yellows and greens and unnatural colors to make it look more like an unnatural infection. Now if you want to bring those two elements together of the blue and the red, you'd have something a little bit more like this.